It's really tempting to treat everything in our life as if it's equal. So when push comes to shove and two competing things need us at the same time, we don't know where to focus because in our mind, it's all equal.
The house cleaning comes last on the list versus something that...
Because it's not fun. Right. It's not fun for anybody.
House, right?
Hey y'all, welcome to the Christy Wright Show. I'm so excited because today we are diving into time management. Yeah, the thing that we all struggle with every day of our lives. Now, if you've been tracking with me, we've been working through the core of confidence, working on your life from the inside out. Spirit, mind, body, relationships, and last week we talked about resources. Now, your resources include your time, your money, and your energy. So we're gonna keep talking about that. We're gonna dive into each of them starting today with focusing on your time. And then I get to have a conversation with one of our Academy members, Misty McCraw. She actually has driven up from Mississippi, and we're gonna dive in to talking about how she manages her time in a real live coaching session with you. It's gonna be fun, but first, let's go ahead and talk about time management. You know, I thought about something recently. I have this habit when it comes to traveling. I don't know if you're like this. When I travel, inevitably, whatever suitcase that I choose, whether I choose a carry-on or a giant one or somewhere in between, I always pack it full. Do you do that? I am shoving and cramming things in there. I'm trying to squeeze another hairbrush, another bobby pin, another pair of shoes, because I might change my mind about the shoes that I packed when I get there. Y'all, inevitably, I am opening the expanders, the zippers. I'm lugging it through the airport, putting it on the scale, hoping that they don't notice that, of course, it's overweight because I have put too much stuff in there. It is heavy. It is a pain. It doesn't fit in the overhead compartment. It just creates one problem after another. And then whenever I get to my destination, aside from having to lug this thing around, of course, I don't have any room in the thing to buy anything. If I go somewhere cute like Charleston, they have fun shops. Maybe I want to get something new. Can't, because I don't have anywhere to pack it. I have run into this problem on almost every single trip I take. And of course, when I get there, I don't use half of the things that I packed, but just for some reason, I feel the need to cram way more into this suitcase than the suitcase can actually hold. We do that with our time, don't we? We have a set amount of time. Everybody knows what it is. You know what it is. I know. It doesn't change, y'all. It's 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. It's the exact same every single day. And still, mysteriously, every day we're like, I couldn't fit all this in. I thought I could. I thought for sure I could cram another pair of shoes into this day, and I can't, and I don't know why. And we're stressed, and we're exhausted, and we're frustrated, and it just makes life hard. And we constantly think that we just need more time. I just need more time. I need to find some time, buy some time. Maybe the time fairy will appear and give me more time. I just need a bigger suitcase. But you know what? That's actually not the problem. The problem is not the amount of time that we have. The problem is how we use it. The problem is not the amount of time that we have. We have the same amount of time every single day, and we can't get a minute more than anyone else on the streets. We all have the exact same amount of hours in a day, so we can't get more time. But what we can do is change how we use the time that we have. Now, I want to tell you my top 3, and I think most people's top 3, time wasters, time sucks, things that steal your time. I'm going to tell you the 3 main categories for me where I find that I lose the most time, okay? Number 1, even as an Enneagram 8, I'm guilty of this. People pleasing. People pleasing. We don't want to ruffle feathers. We don't want to make waves. We don't want to disappoint people. We want to make people happy. We want to say yes when they invite us. So people pleasing leads us to spend our time on things that are not important to us. So we say yes to the potluck. We say yes to the small group. We say yes to the volunteer dinner. We say yes to that party. We say yes to lots and lots of good things. And that's important because they're good things. They're good things. They might be church things, ministry things, social things, marriage things. We just say yes to all these things, but because they're good, we think, oh my gosh, we've got to do them. But it's too many things. We're saying yes in all of these places, and we don't have enough time. Pleasing people, saying yes when we want to say no, leads us to use our time in ways that are not right for us, that are not right for what we want for our life, that are not what's important to us. So I think people pleasing is a really, really big category of where we lose our time or waste our time. The second category is similar to the first, but it's a little bit different. The second category is being the hero. Now, this is a little bit different because when you're people pleasing, you're more focused on how are they going to perceive me? How are they going to react? I need to say yes because I don't want to let them down. I've got to say yes. I've got to show up. I've got to show up. Being the hero is a little different because it's more about us. We feel this need to save the day. We feel this need to be the hero, to be Mother Teresa, to save the world, to show up. If there's a gap, we bridge it. If there's a problem, we solve it. If there's a need, we fill it. We show up and again and again and again because we have this need to be needed. Now, we wouldn't say that. We wouldn't even acknowledge that necessarily. We might say, oh no, I just want to help them out. Oh, I just want to fix that problem. But the core root of what's going on is being needed makes us feel good about ourselves. Being needed makes us feel important. Being needed fills some void in us. I heard a friend one time say, there's a very big difference in doing something to be loving and doing it to be loved. And I think if we're honest, a lot of our efforts to please people and show up and fill the gaps and be the hero is really an effort to be loved. An effort to be okay, an effort to get affirmation, an effort to get praise and compliments and applause, an effort to go, oh my gosh, can you believe she did that? Did you see how she threw that party? Did you see how she cleaned that whole house? Did you see how she did that thing? Like, oh, this old thing. We do it because it fills a void in us. Being the hero is a very tempting way to lose your time because you want to show up for everyone else, but it's really pointing a light to something that's going on in you. So one of the first categories is people pleasing. The second is being the hero. The third would just be checking out. Checking out on TV, social media. And I don't hate TV. I don't hate Netflix. I don't hate social media. I don't hate these things. But let me just give you some really interesting statistics. Do you know that the average American checks their phone over 100 times a day? The average American watches between 3 and 5 hours of TV per day. The average American spends around 2.5 hours on social media per day. Now, I don't think that you would say that the most important thing in your life is TV or Instagram. I certainly wouldn't say that. It's not intentional that we check out and look at our phones, but we're tired at the end of the day. We just want to sit back, turn on a good show, scroll through Facebook, just check out. But when we check out, we're losing those hours. We're spending those hours on things that are not important to us. And then we wake up every day and say, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time to hang out with my kids. I don't have enough time to work out. I don't have enough time to read my Bible. I don't have enough time to go on a date with my spouse. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. Oh, but I know what everybody's doing on Facebook. Or I know who got the last rose on The Bachelor. Let me tell you something. If you know about every single person accepting a rose on The Bachelorette, but you don't know about the own man living in your own house, you don't have a time problem. You got a priority problem. You've got a priority problem. See, it's not the time issue that we have. It's knowing what to do with it. It's understanding what is most important in our life. What actually should get those hours, our finite hours in our one life on this earth. Understanding what is most important for us and then spending our time on them. That's it. That, to me, is success in time management. That is the end goal. If you can spend your life and your time on what's important to you, that's it. Well done. You don't have to have apps and schedules and to-do lists and efficient, processes. You just need to spend your one life on what you care about. That sounds so simple, but it's so hard to do. Because of these time traps of people pleasing and being the hero and checking out and wasting time with distractions, what happens is we spend all of our time over here when what we actually care about is over here. So we have this gap between what we care about and what we actually spend our life on. Of course we're stressed. Of course we're exhausted. Of course we're frustrated and anxious because there's an inconsistency in our life between what we care about and what our life really reflects. If you care about working out, your schedule should reflect it. If you care about your marriage, your schedule should reflect it. If you care about time with your kids, your schedule should reflect it. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. You have a finite amount of hours in a day, in a week. You have a certain size suitcase. Only so many things will fit. Our job is to figure out what fits. Our job is to figure out what makes the cut. Our job is to figure out what is most important that makes it in our life. You know, I've used the example of my house being clean before, but I think this is a great example because I could clean all the rooms in my house. I could do that. I could work really hard every day to go behind my 3 small children and just clean up all their messes all the time in all the rooms. Now, I've chosen not to. I've chosen to focus on the kitchen, the living room, and my bedroom, and I want those rooms to be clean, and I'm fine if the other rooms are not, the bonus room is not, the boys' rooms are not. I've chosen not to, but I could. I could clean all the rooms. I could say that's most important to me. And then I would never get to play with my kids. I would never see them. We wouldn't play basketball in the driveway every night after work. We wouldn't play on the swing. We wouldn't go for walks around the neighborhood. We wouldn't do any of those things that we actually right now do. But the house would be clean. The house would be clean. See, you know what? That's not important to me. I can intentionally look at the amount of time I have between 5 o'clock after work and 7:30 or 8 when my kids go to bed, and I go, I've got 3 hours. You know how I'm going to spend it? Not cleaning the bonus room. I'm going to spend it playing with my kids in the driveway, playing basketball, on a walk around the neighborhood. So I can walk in the bonus room with pride and confidence and power and control and say, I choose this messy room because I said no to this, I got to say yes to this. I got to say yes to this good time. I got to say yes to being present with my kids. I got to say yes to these things that are important to me. Now, I don't know what that is for you. I don't know what the priority looks like for you. I don't know what the responsibilities look like for you. But what I do know is you've got to choose. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. My challenge for you is to look at your life through the lens of priorities. Look at your time through the lens of priorities. It's not about doing everything for an equal amount of time. Life balance is about doing the right things at the right time. What are your priorities this week? What are your priorities today? What are your priorities in this season? And guess what? You have permission for those to change next week, tomorrow, in the next season, where those priorities and your focus and your time changes to reflect what's important to you then. I guarantee you, what's important to you right now is different than what was important to you 3 months ago. And what was important to you 3 months ago was very different than what it was in January when we all started this crazy year. Priorities can change. Seasons change. Life changes. What matters is that you spend your one life on what's most important to you. All right, y'all, I'm so excited because we are doing something brand new today. We are going to do a live coaching session with you where we are diving into the struggle of time management. And I have my good friend, Misty McCraw here from Mississippi.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. So Misty, you've been an Academy member for 2 years. Mm-hmm. So you know that we have talked about time management 1,000 times.
Yes.
And no matter how much we talk about it, it's still a struggle. Like you struggle with it, I struggle with it. I know our viewers, listeners struggle with it. And we have this finite amount of time and it seems like we can never get everything done. And so I want to spend a few minutes with you. And I know with your story, I've heard a little bit about it. Some of the things you're struggling with time management are the things that everybody struggles with, that I've heard a million times that I struggle with. So I want to spend this session really focusing on what's important to you. So before we even dive in, and I've talked about this in the Academy before, I'd love to hear from you, like, what is the number one thing that you want to focus on, or what's the number one thing you'd love to get out of this session when we really dive into this together?
So for me with my time management, it's more of just not knowing where to start.
Okay.
Like, I know it needs to be there, and I know some of the things just from your teachings in the Academy and things that we've learned throughout the years. I have the struggle of, I get so much on my to-do list and not knowing how to prioritize it and where to start from. And so just getting a good sense of kind of how to start and then build on that to really use that finite time to be efficient for myself. And right now I don't feel like I have that going for me at all.
Yeah.
And just like you said, like a lot of people.
Yeah, I hear you. You know, it's interesting the way that you describe like where to start. I think a lot of us do this with business, with goals, fitness, time, whatever. We look at what's in front of us like, okay, where do I start? Where do I begin? What's the first step? And sometimes that can be helpful in business. It's like just do the small thing. But I think sometimes it helps to almost zoom out and look ahead and say, okay, where am I going? Where am I trying to get to? So I'd love to hear from you. Let's just take a minute and you can think out loud. There's no right or wrong answer here. Like this is for you. What would be your version of success? So when you think of like, here is my version of winning when it comes to time management. Here's how I would describe success in time management. Because once we define what that looks like, we can back out of it and figure out how to start. But it's so hard to know where to start when we don't know what the finish line is. So let's just take a minute and you think out loud, what does it look like for you to be successful at managing your time?
So for me, I think it's more of actually feeling like I've accomplished something.
Okay.
And so right now I feel like I'm doing so many different things that I know that we've talked about, but I never feel like I can give one thing 100% of my time.
Okay.
And so I never feel like that one to-do list for, my full-time job's getting done or my one to-do list for my side business is getting done or just life in general. And so just having that end goal of just feeling like I can, at the end of the day, I don't have 500 things going on my mind of what I need to get done for tomorrow. I can just relax and say, okay, I've accomplished today. I'm set up for tomorrow, and I can feel good about going into that.
Do you feel scattered?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Do you think talk to me about multitasking. Is that something that helps you, or is it something where you feel like, because I'm trying to do so many things at one time, I don't feel like I do anything well? You know what I mean? Sometimes we can, sometimes it can harm us, I feel like.
I definitely feel like that, but I also feel like I almost have to multitask. I feel like to get some things done, but then sometimes I have to go back and say, okay, did I do it the way I needed to do it? And so I'm having to kind of backtrack sometimes too. So for me, I love multitasking because I feel like it keeps me using my time well, but sometimes I don't know that that's necessarily the answer to get done what I'm trying to get done, if that makes sense.
Okay. So right now on an average week or an average day, how do you plan your day? Like how do you map out your calendar or how you spend your time currently where you say at the end of the day, I don't feel like I did what I wanted to do or I didn't get done what I wanted to get done. So how are you kind of managing it right now?
Well, and that's one of my so I'm a list person, but for whatever reason, when it comes to to-do list, I'm the worst at it.
Okay.
So it's not so much. So right now, I wouldn't say that I'm not doing anything. Like there's nothing being done, but it's not in a systematic way to say, okay, when I get to work tomorrow, I know I need to do these things and this needs to be done first and so on. So I'm not really taking probably the time that I should to really think out how that needs to go to use my time effectively. I keep a calendar, but I keep it for appointments. I don't really keep it for planning out the day as far as, this time I need to be doing this or this needs to be done by then. So it's that I could really work on to make probably the next day go a little better. Yeah. But then that goes back to me thinking, where do I really start when it comes to deciding what absolutely needs done, how to prioritize that, and roll into the next day, kind of knowing that ahead of time.
Okay, let's talk about that. You said something interesting. So it sounds like you have plenty of things to do. There's no
Absolutely.
shortage. And can I get an amen? There's no shortage of things for us to do, especially as busy women. But I think one of the things I've seen, and I've done this before, where it's really tempting to treat everything in our life as if it's equal. So and this could be with our calendar or our to-do list. So when push comes to shove and two competing things need us at the same time, we don't know where to focus because in our mind, it's all equal. We really, a lot of us, and I say this for myself, certainly struggle with prioritizing. We struggle with saying, this is the most important, this is the second most important, this is the third most important. And if I get to 4 and 5, great. And if I don't, I'm intentionally choosing to not get to them because I'm choosing to say yes to this thing. So talk to me about when you, like to-do list as an example, because it sounds like that's one of the pain points for you because you have all these things to do and don't feel like you do what you should have done at the end of the day. What would it look like to create some type of priorities to this. Is that hard for you, or is it something that you could do it, but you just haven't made time for it?
So that's one of my struggles, because for me, I have things outside of work that I'm passionate about that I sometimes want to make a priority that may not necessarily be the priority. Mm-hmm. And then there's things at work that need to be the priority that I kind of want to just push to the side a little bit to make it. And even just in life in general with priorities, it's, the house cleaning comes last on the list versus something that,
because that's not fun.
Right.
It's not fun for anybody.
Cleaning house, right? Nobody loves laundry. Yeah. But so it is hard for me to prioritize in a way that the true priorities come first versus the passion priorities. Yeah. But it's hard to kind of make your mind work around, I'm so into this right now, but I really need to get this done, because that's the
needs
struggle.
versus the wants.
Right,
the ongoing struggle of everyone's budget. Like, it's like we all struggle with this. Okay, let's do an exercise. This will just be fun. When someone asks me to like boil it down to like what are the most important things, it can be really hard, but let's just do that. Let's think of what are the top, let's say 5, 3 to 5, you can just make them up, responsibility. We're not doing like micro tasks right now. We're just saying like these are the main categories: my side business, my full-time job. What are those 5 things that you traditionally spend the most of your time on or want to? Like these should be the 5 most important things in general.
Well, obviously full-time job, because that pays the bills, right?
Yeah.
So that, of course, just home in general is a big one, because, bless it, I have
Housework,
a husband that pitches in way more than he probably should because he's just that great. My side business. I'm also, a friend and I started a businesswomen group in our local community just to bring local businesswomen together. So just kind of as a leader of that kind of forces that as kind of a priority as well. And then I also am on the board of a nonprofit that I help run. And so those are probably some of the top things that get the majority of my time. Okay. And that's really one of those other struggles that I deal with is it time for me to step away from some of those that may not be helping me get to that end goal? Or is it okay to kind of keep those in the loop and just learn how to restructure to where, because I'll be honest, I'm the worst at delegating. Like, I'm just one of those, let me do it, get it done, and I know it's right kind of thing.
Yeah, totally.
So, and I think that takes away a lot of time that I could be putting to other things. And so just trying to figure all of that out.
Okay, so let's just kind of force ourselves to look at, because your time is finite. Your full-time job fits in those hours. Like those hours are already allocated. But in your off hours, so the extra hours, so the after work time, the early morning time, the weekend time, all those other things you mentioned, from housework to side business to the women's group, all those types of things. If you have to put those in some type of order and say, if nothing gets done, this is the most important. If I have time for a second thing, like let's take those other 4 outside of your work.
Right.
And let's prioritize those. And that doesn't, now you've heard me talk about this before probably in the academy, but I don't want you to think of priorities as fixed, like on a given day, you can't redirect them. But just in general, hey, this is really important to me. If I get this done, I feel great about my life. I feel great about myself. And if these other ones are more optional. So let's take those other 4, I think it was 3 or 4, and kind of put those in order. What would that look like?
It's not in this order right now, but the order I would love it to be.
Right, that's what we're working towards.
Okay.
End goal.
So first, of course, would be just the household. Just helping my husband with keeping the house clean and taking care of our animals and doing all of those things would be priority number 1. Okay. And then it would be the side business, obviously, because I would like to get that to a point to where, just like everybody else in the academy, it's helping us supplement our income to have that extra money for things. And then would probably be the organization I'm involved with, the nonprofit, just because it's a passion project of mine. And then, of course, the businesswomen's group, which that one probably takes the least amount of my time than any of them. So that kind of, I guess, default falls to the end. Okay. But that would be like the order that I would love for it to be in on a normal basis.
Okay, so how is it normally? How is it right now? You just feel scattered, or is it just those groups are kind of making it to the top of the list?
Everything's scattered.
Okay.
Everything's scattered. Like right now, my business has picked up, my side business, so that's kind of priority right now, and everything else is kind of getting pushed to the side. There's seasons where, the organization's important, and, everything else gets pushed to the side, and there's times where, housework just has to be done. So you kind of have to put that into the priority. So, right now I just feel kind of scattered amongst all of it and not real sure where to put most of the focus.
I think we have this idea that life balance is you give everything an equal amount of time, 15 minutes of this and 15 minutes. Right. It's like you end up at the end of the day going, I did a lot and I did nothing somehow. Right. You know what I mean? I don't feel like I did anything even though I was so busy. So there's something really powerful in focus. I'll give you a practical example, even with the Christy Wright Show. We batch the episodes. So right now we're shooting this. We're going to shoot another episode after this, and we batch them together where once we're in the studio, everybody's set up, we go ahead and record all of it, and then we may go 2 weeks before we do another shoot. So I want you to think about your schedule and your to-do list in terms of batching. Housework is a great example because housework is unending.
Right.
It doesn't matter who you are. You're never done.
Right.
You're never like, got it, I'm going to put my feet up.
Perfect.
No, because as soon as you get situated and everything is dusted, you're like, I never liked that plant. I need a new plant. You come up with house projects. I need new curtains. We all do this. So what I think would be really good with the housework side of it or the house responsibilities is to, like anything, define success. So what does success look like for you in the house? Because some of those things are, if they're important to you, if a made bed is important to you, then you can create a schedule where you wake up and make your bed. But if it's important to you and you never get to it, you constantly come into your room, you don't like your room, you don't like your life, you don't like your house, you see what I'm saying? So figure out what those are. But figure out what you can let go. With your housework and your schedule, I think it'd be a great exercise to decide what are the priorities, like what is the order. So if housework is number one outside of your full-time job, then you can batch that and say, okay, I'm making this up. Sunday nights, I'm going to spend 4 hours. I'm going to do all the laundry for the week, all the dishes, all the grocery shopping, whatever those things are that define success at home for you. And you batch that, and it just gives you freedom to, on the next day, focus on your side business. Or on the next day, go to your women's group because you did that thing that was most important first. So I think the priorities would give you permission to focus on one thing at a time. So instead of trying to do a little bit every day and feeling like you've done nothing, then it gives you an opportunity to focus and batch and become more efficient, get more momentum, and probably get more done. So how does that feel to you in terms of approaching your to-do list from a end calendar, batching perspective, prioritizing, but also batching where you're focusing on one thing at a time?
I think it would help a lot, especially with, like right now being so scattered, I easily get burned out.
Yeah.
Whether it be with house or business or work or whatever it may be in general. And so I think doing that would really take care of some of that burnout feeling and probably feel more accomplished at the end of the day by saying, okay, that was my priority for today. It's done. Yeah. And take kind of the load off of, going to bed knowing you have 500,000 other things to do tomorrow. Yeah. So,
and we all do.
I love that idea.
Okay, so from here, because when we started, you said, I want to know where to start. So like when you leave here and you're like, okay, I'm going to actually put this into practice. So we're going to back out of, if your version of success is I want to feel like I got stuff done at the end of the day. That's what I think you said. And then we say, I need to know where to start. And the path to get there is going to be, I'm going to focus and batch my responsibilities, and reflect it on my calendar. What are you going to do to start? Like, how will you actually begin to put that into practice so that you know what you need to do when you leave here. Right. You know what I mean? It's not just a nice idea and a fun conversation, but you're like, okay, I'm going to go home and actually start and do this. Yeah. What are those first steps for you?
Well, for me, and this, I'll be honest, was a tip from my husband earlier.
Oh, good. I love it.
Putting it on paper. I mean, that really, as simple as it sounds, it does kind of getting it out of my head. One thing just kind of frees up the brain space a little bit. Yeah. But getting it out of my head on paper and then actually going and following through and holding myself accountable, I think is a good first step for me, because I know if I can put it on paper and I'm looking at it and I see that it needs done, I'm more likely to do it than just think about it and then forget it 5 minutes later. Yeah. Because my brain, I forget what I had for breakfast this morning. So that for me is kind of a good way to get started, is just having it out of my head on paper and seeing it there. And that way I know, okay, that's not checked off. Let's get it done.
Yeah. David Allen wrote a really good book called Getting Things Done. And he says in his book, your mind is made for having ideas, not for holding them. And we spend so much energy trying to hold the ideas. So when you write it down, that can be so helpful. So I think that's great. I think that's a perfect place for you to start, because when you start to put it on paper, and you'll go home and actually like look at your calendar and say, okay, and you can revisit this every week. This is not a set it and forget it thing. You can say, say, okay, this week, my priority is my side business because it's a busy season and my calendar is going to reflect that. And maybe the housework is not a priority. And I'm going to intentionally say it's okay if there's dishes in the sink, or it's okay if I don't make my bed. So it's just choosing what your version of success is and choosing how you spend your time versus feeling like a victim to it. Like, oh, I didn't do all the things, but we never defined success. So of course we didn't get there. So I think it'd be great for you to go home and as you look at your calendar, I think that will answer the question for you when you say, do I have time for these women's group? Well, when you start to plug in, okay, the housework goes here, the full-time job goes here, the side business goes here. If there's room for it as a third or fourth or fifth priority, then you do. And if there's not, then that answers that question. But I think it gives you an opportunity to put the first things first on your calendar. And then what I think what's so great about this when we actually do this, and I try to do this each Sunday. Each Sunday I look at my week ahead to say like, okay, what am I focusing on this week? It gives you such freedom because you don't feel guilty about not doing those things. You intentionally choose not to do those things. You're like, no, I'm choosing to do this instead. You know, it gives you that opportunity.
I think it also makes it a good communication place because while Marshall and I talk about appointments that we may have for the week, we never really talk about, okay, I'm going to be busy on this day. I need you to do this for me, or vice versa. So it also kind of leads into that good conversation starter with just your schedule in general. Because, of course, we communicate about things going on, but you never really know, okay, maybe this came up and I need to cover this for him or this for her. So it's a good conversation starter, too, I think.
Yeah, it's fun to, just like with the budget, it allows you to be on the same team and play from the same playbook. So you're like, oh, you've got this going on, or I've got this going on, and you're speaking the same language. So I think that's so good. Misty, this is really fun because I think one of the things that's really cool about this conversation specifically is the things that you struggle with are things that every single person struggles with, the things that I struggle with. And so it's just such a good reminder for me, for you, for everybody watching that your calendar is not something that you are just a passive participant. You're in control of it. You know, it's like we said yesterday, anything on your calendar is something you put there. Anything on your to-do list is something you put there. So we have control, which is very empowering to know that we can change it and do something different. So thanks so much for coming. Thanks for hanging out, being our first live coaching guest, coming up from Mississippi. I'm so glad you're here, and I hope this really helps. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, y'all, we're going to spend a little time journaling and reflecting. And I've got a scripture of the week for us like I usually do. I love this because it's a good reminder that God cares about how we spend our time. This is in 2 Corinthians 9:7. It says, each man should give what he has decided in his heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound to you so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. Now, obviously, this is usually referring to giving with tithes and offerings, but I think it's a good reminder with our time. I'm guilty of this, of telling people that I will do something and then in my heart, resenting them for asking, resenting myself for saying yes when I wanted to say no. And I just constantly feel myself spinning my wheels, trying to chase approval or people pleasing or being the hero or spending my time in ways that I feel guilted into or obligated to. And I love how this reminds us that we should spend our time on things that are important to us, on things that God has placed in front of us, not out of guilt or compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. I'd love for you to think about what this means for you in your life, how you spend your time. We talk about time like it's this outside thing, but your time is your life. That's what it's made up of. Your life is made up of how you spend your time. So it's really important. I think it's important to God with the time that He gives us that we would be good stewards of using our time. So I want to first just ask you something, and this is going to help you reflect. It's important for me as well. The first question is just what steals your time the most? You know, I went through several examples earlier today, but what are those areas where you find yourself losing your time, wasting your time, being guilted into spending your time? What is that for you? What steals your time the most? Write down your answer. The second question is similar, but a little bit different. Where do you feel guilt or resentment around how you spend your time? Are there things that you show up to every single week and you're just disgruntled about it? You're angry, you don't want to be there, you don't know why you're doing it? Are there things that you say yes to when you really wish you'd say no? Really wish you would have said no? I tell people all the time, an honest no is better than a dishonest yes. But it's hard, isn't it? What's that for you? Where do you feel guilt or resentment around how you spend your time? Write down your answer. The third question is switching gears a little bit, and I want you to think about what you want your calendar to be, what you want it to look like. So here's what I want you to think about. What are your top priorities? What's most important to you? You only get to pick a couple, okay? Maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4. Definitely no more than 5. You can't have 25 most important things, okay? What are your top priorities? Write down those answers. Fourth question is this: does your calendar reflect it? Does your calendar reflect what you just wrote down as your most important priorities? Or do you have some work to do? Do you have some changes to make so that your calendar and your life and your time actually reflects what you say is most important to you? If you wrote down your family, does your calendar reflect that? If you wrote down self-care, if you wrote down a side business, if you wrote down a dream, does your calendar reflect that? Write down your answer. And lastly, what changes do you sense that God might be asking you to make when it comes to how you spend your time? Is there something that you've been doing for years and your heart's just not in it anymore and it's time to bow out? It's time to close that chapter of your life? Is there something maybe you need to start? You've been waiting and procrastinating and praying and researching and planning, but you've just been too scared to start. And God's saying, it's time to start. It's time to take a brave step of faith and do that thing. What changes do you sense that God is asking you to make when it comes to managing your time? Write down your answer. All right, I'm going to pray for us as we wrap up. God, thank you that you know our days. Thank you that you know every minute, every hour, every year, every season, every quarter, every stage and phase that we will go through. You already know it. You have gone ahead of us. You know how things are going to turn out even when we're worried. You know the things that are not a big deal that we think are such a big deal. And God, most of all, you care about how we spend our life, this life that you have given us. You care about how we spend our time, how we steward this resource that you've blessed us with. God, I pray that you would give us courage to walk away from things that are not from you. I pray that you would give us courage to say no when it's not right for us, even if that other person is convincing, even if we want to make them happy, even if we want to feel loved. Would you give us courage to say the right thing, the true thing in that moment? Would you give us confidence in you that even if we say no and turn them down and decline that offer, that we're okay and they're okay? Would you give us that confidence? God, I pray that you would give us clarity, that you would show us what are the right things to put on our calendar. What are the right things to say yes to? What are the right things to make time for, to show up to? What are those things that you have for us? God, I confess that sometimes I'm so busy, I don't even know if I'm missing out on things you have for me because I'm just so busy doing my own thing. God, help us create margin so that you can put on our plate what you would have there, that you would put in our life what you would have there, that you would put on our calendar what you would have there. Your ideas are so much better than our ideas, and your plans are so much better than our plans. God, I just want us to have an opportunity to give back to you what is already yours, which is our life and our time and our calendar. Please fill it with those things that are only from you. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and you could join me next week where we are continuing to talk about your resources. Today, we talked about your time. Next week, we're going to talk about managing your money. I'll see you then.